Call to order the Monday, May 8th, 2023 public meeting of the Norton Conservation
Recording in progress.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. Let me start over.
No, that's fine.
Dan, would you like to read about public meetings, please?
Oh, yes. Pursuant to Governor Healy's March 29th, 2023 bill extending several COVID-era policies and programs by allowing virtual meetings to continue from March 31st, 2023 to March 31st, 2025. This meeting of the Norton Conservation Commission will be conducted via remote participation to the greatest extent possible. Specific information and the general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public and/or parties with a right and/or requirement to attend this meeting can be found at the end of this agenda. Members of the public attending this public hearing/meeting virtually will be allowed to make comments if they wish to do so during the portion of the hearing designated for public comment by raising their hand virtually or pressing *9 if participating by phone. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time and that we are unable to do so. Despite best efforts, we will post on the Norton Cable website, www.nortonmediacenter.org, an audio or video recording, transcript, or other comprehensive record of proceedings as soon as possible after the meeting.
Thanks, Dan. Looks like we have members: Dan Pearson, Rob Riley, Tom Vest, Mark Fernandez, myself, and John Thomas. And I assume Megan's off for a while?
She's off until the first week of July.
Okay. All right, so it doesn't look like we have any new public hearings. The first continued public hearing is DEP file 250-1123, notice of intent for 13 Dean Street. Daniel Pires. Is there an applicant here, representative for 13 Dean Street?
They're supposed to be.
Yes. Can you hear me? Hello?
Yes.
Hi, my name is Stephen from SFG Engineering at 28 Main Street in Lakeville. We're back here with a continuance for 13 Dean Street for a septic system repair. Since the last meeting, we've revised the plan to address comments from the commission. And the revisions included moving flags 2 to 5, adding flags in the back of the property, wetland flags from 11 to 14 to continue the wetland across the back of the property up to the garage, the rear of the garage, and onto the abutting property to the south of our property.
Okay.
The buffer zones were revised.
Instead of trying to visualize this, does anybody have a plan?
Yeah, I'm going to pull it up right now. Give me 1 second.
I mean, the description's fine, but we need to be able to follow along on the plan.
While he's doing that, Mr. Gilbert, would you mind?
Thanks, John.
All right.
Okay. Now that can you just zoom in on the
Does
plan?
anyone else have difficulty hearing?
No?
Sorry, 1
Are you
second.
having problems, Dan? Dan, you having problems with audio? I think he is. He's frozen.
Just a tiny bit. I'm here.
Okay. Can you
Can you
hear
see
everything?
me? I can hear.
Sorry,
Okay.
let me try sharing that on my screen again. Give
Okay.
me 1 second. All right, here it is. Coming up right now. Can everyone see that?
Yes.
Okay.
You
so-
you can continue, Mr. Gilbert.
Yeah, so Stephen, can you go over those, flag changes, please?
Yes, I'm hoping you can see my cursor.
I'm currently sharing the screen, so we don't see your cursor.
Okay. Okay, so what we did is, if you look towards the street side of the property, flags 2 to 5 were adjusted quite a bit. If you look to the left, you can see the edge of the intermittent stream. The wetland line, we originally somewhat following the edge of that intermittent stream, but after we met with the conservation out there, he decided that he wanted to bring the wetland line in quite a bit. It bumps in, as you can see up from Dean Street, it bumps in flags 2 through 5, bump in, and then it continues down to where it originally was going away from the street. I don't know if you can see those.
Yes.
And that's our area of largest concern, because that's obviously the closest to our proposed septic system. And we're keeping the septic system 25 feet off of that line from flags R3 to R4. We continued the line to the rear of the property. Again, there are wetlands to the south of our property. So, the director wanted us to continue running the line to the back of the property, running up to our garage corner where it meets with the line of our abutter and it goes away from our property. So basically it's surrounded by wetlands to both sides and the rear.
So,
Buffer zones were revised, obviously, with these new flag locations. And the proposed bottomless sand filter is to be maintained 25 feet off of the BBW. Again, the edge of the intermittent stream was added to the plan. The stream does not show up on StreamStats program, but we did locate the edge of it and showed it. And the proposed setback from the BBW to the components have been revised on the plan accordingly. The sediment control line that we staked goes from the back corner of the garage. It angles towards the property line, towards the street. It hits the property line. It runs right up the property line. You can see the round flag lines that we have for that sediment control. So it basically runs from the garage to the property line and from the property line to the street along the property line.
so John Thomas, has everything been addressed by the applicant?
Yeah, I mean, the main components of this was the delineation of the resource areas and making that classification that it's not within riverfront, which it's not. That was kind of the clarification and provisions that needed to be made. I've talked to the Board of Health agent. They're comfortable with this system. There's a couple waivers they have to get through the Board of Health, but that's outside our purview and jurisdiction.
Okay, the one question I had was the 11 Dean Street, that's in a butter. So look at the majority of the flagging was on an abutting property. Did you get permission to hang those flags, and are you going to remove those? I mean, you hung the majority of flags on somebody else's property, right?
Yeah, well, that's pretty common that we have to do that because they want they always want the lines completely. Although it's on their property, with the stream being there, the intermittent stream being there, it doesn't look like it's on their property. It is, I understand, but it's not like.
Right. My question is, did you ask permission of the landowner to place flags on their property?
No, I did not ask permission. No, I did not.
So if that's the case, then obviously I think it's best for us to request a revision of the plan, provided that we're only confirming the resource areas and buffers on site. So obviously we can show those resource designation labels as approximated or confirmed resource area as of what's today's date? We
could just write the order to 13 Dean Street, but I would suggest next time that you ask permission if you're going to put flags on somebody else's property. Some people don't want them, 1, and 2, you should probably take them down because the limit of work is going to be the property line anyway, and I assume that's going to be staked. So, okay, that was my only comment.
Yeah, it is staked.
Did any other commission members have a comment or question? Okay.
Sorry, I was late. I had difficulty getting into the meeting, but this must be a rather old house. Is that correct?
Yeah, I believe this house was built in the 40s.
Yes,
So-
it's very old.
So it's been there prior to the Wetlands Protection Act.
So that was the reason for this. I mean, I've never seen this kind of leaching system before, which obviously is not our purview, but I assume it's because there's so little land available.
Yes, there's not much other alternatives, and based on my discussions with the Board of Health agent, this is the preferred methodology versus the alternative. And he feels that this system will function better than the alternative, and that's the reason why he would be willing to grant the variances. That's my understanding. Obviously, I'm not the Board of Health agent, but that's what he relayed to me.
But this shouldn't really have any effect on wetlands, assuming that the leaching system works as advertised. I assume that there are not a lot of occupants of this household, which actually is more on Board of Health purview. So anyway, I have no difficulty with the project myself. This is a notice. This is a notice of intent. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yes.
All right.
I'm going to keep going, Julian. We need a motion to close if there's no other comments from the public.
As long as you are chair, for the moment, I can offer a motion to close a public hearing for file number 250-1123, although we have to be sure there are no members of the audience or other members of the commission that want to ask questions first.
All right, I have a motion by Julian to close the
Second.
public hearing. Was that a second, Tom?
Yes, second that.
Oh, Tom's here. Good.
Roll call vote,
I'm
Dan.
writing all this. Sorry, I'm writing this all down for the minutes. So,
Okay.
aye.
Ron,
Sorry.
Take me home.
Ron. All right, we'll go back to Ron. Mark,
Aye.
Toma,
Aye.
Julian,
And I'll throw in an aye.
Ron,
Aye.
and I'll throw in an eye. Okay, motion carries.
Thank
All
you.
right, Julian, you're up next. Letter B.
Did you re-elect me chair? Is that what happened? I didn't hear.
Yes. I just waved my magic wand.
Okay. All right. Again, I apologize for, I'd say, John, a hot link wasn't sent out. Is that right?
I thought I sent it out. Did I not send it out?
Yeah, I had to cut and paste it in too.
Oh,
Well,
okay.
yeah, well, I tried from Google Drive, but then it gave me all kinds of error signals, and then I had to.
All right. I'll have to double check it. I thought I copied it from Zoom's website, so maybe
We're
that's
fine.
the wrong way of doing it.
So our next item on the agenda is, I believe it's file number 250-1124 concerning 301 South Worcester Street's notice of intent. This is a continued public hearing. So do we have a representative of the applicant?
Yes, good evening, Mr. Chairman. You have Scott Goddard from Goddard Consulting, wetland scientist representing the applicant. You also have Nick Fasandola from Level Design Group, civil engineer, also representing the applicant here this evening. How are you?
I am fine. Maybe we can share your screen. Go from
Yeah,
there.
sure thing. I'll start by sharing my screen. No problem. I trust you can see that.
Not quite yet, but yes.
Okay. So very good. So I'll start off the presentation. Since the last public hearing we had, a number of pieces of information were received by the applicants and their consultant team. A number of responses have been submitted to the commission to address those comments. So we submitted a revision package on May 4th last week, which included an update site plan, which is what you see displayed on the screen before you. Sheet C-3.0 is one sheet of the detailed sheet set, but the most comprehensive for the purposes of looking at the site in its entirety. We can zoom in on any relevant areas for sure. We also included a response letter by Level Design Group to the PGP stormwater management review that happened by peer review. We submitted also through Level Design Group a revised stormwater report. Both of those were dated April 24th, 2023. I saw a late minute entry come in from PGP just this afternoon that the changes were received and largely accepted as satisfactory to their peer review, but Nick can go into that in a little bit more detail momentarily. I think what might be helpful to do is just highlight for you some of the notable plan changes and kind of pick out some of the high points of the response narrative that we included on the May 4th letter, which was basically a point-by-point response to the DEP file number comments, and then the comments by John Thomas that were submitted to the project team. Would that be an acceptable sort of path this evening, Mr. Chairman? Can you hear me?
Julian, you're muted. Sorry.
Sorry about that. Yes, it sounds good.
Okay. We'll keep, and we can keep it brief. I think we don't need to go through every point that's in the narrative, although we can dig deeper as needed. So DEP and John brought up the point about the need for a water quality certificate for areas of isolated wetland fill under 5,000 square feet. So the topic of isolated wetlands that were found to be non-jurisdictional under the Wetland Protection Act were a recurring comment that came up in the DEP and John Thomas comments. So what we did for the purposes of graphical representation on this plan, we showed these two areas. One is located right here along Dean Street, and the other is located right here, more kind of south central to the site. So when we did the ANRAD, those two areas were determined to be non-jurisdictional IVW areas. The one that's closer to Dean Street is mapped as a PVP. And for the purposes of this submittal, we're treating it with the kind of respect that we would treat something as if it were a recognized certified vernal pool to a large degree, although it's not certified at this point. It's something that could be certified. However, the area, the small little one over here doesn't hold any water in the springtime and doesn't meet any characteristics that would even come close to meeting a vernal pool characteristic. So we did look at those two zones. So the question about whether or not a water quality certificate would be needed for alteration of IVWs, what we did to deal with that is took this little IVW, which previously had grading right through the middle of it, and put a retaining wall around the middle of it and shifted the limit of work line and the common driveway to just avoid filling it. Because it's in some senses, it's easier to not fill it than to have to go through the 401 water quality certificate pathway. So that was the sort of the, I'll call it the path of least resistance on dealing with that. And both that DEP and John did raise that. On the box culvert, which is here, we included a lot more details, a whole detail sheet about cross sections and blown up design elements so you can see it at a higher resolution. Clarified that we weren't altering BBW, that it was a a bank-only consideration. The commission may remember that that's a culvert upgrade from an existing undersized corrugated pipe that lies in there. So we're enhancing wildlife habitat connectivity, ecological connectivity, flow path connectivity. And we believe that that ultimately results in a net benefit to the functions and values of the stream corridor, as well as the BVW upgrading and downgrading it without causing any notable downstream flooding or those kind of things that you might be concerned about. We just don't have any real upgradient retention of water that would be released. Keep in mind, we have this culvert already right here under John Scott Boulevard that is a notable restriction point right up gradient. So opening up this culvert here, we can see as being a positive benefit to the ecology as opposed to something that could cause some down gradient impacts. That was discussed in a little bit more detail in the narrative. The other thing I think is worth mentioning is in trying to recognize some vernal pool characteristics of this IVW that's too small to be ILSF, what we've done is we've set the small infiltration system under the driveway to be greater than 50 feet away. That's the 50-foot line right there. And we also took the septic system that was proposed, and per Title V, if it were a certified pool, it would have to be 100 feet away. So we had the septic system in here before, so we shifted it 100 feet away to give it that same level of recognition and protection. And of course, even though it's non-jurisdictional, and could be filled in by right in some sense under the Wetland Protection Act, we're choosing to not touch it. In fact, to protect the substantial buffer zone around it. So those measures were taken, much like what we did on the following project that's coming up after this at 192 Taunton Ave. So it was a similar kind of situation there. We updated some of the calculations for the riverfront area impacts. The only encroachment into riverfront is this septic system right here, this house and septic right here. These two wells are in existing field areas and are just temporary to site wells. And then this feature right here is a stormwater management feature, which are exempt from the calculations for riverfront area impacts. All in all, it puts us well under the 10% allocated for riverfront area alteration for new construction. We're not treating this as a degraded surfaces analysis for redevelopment, all meeting new development standards. The only reason we brought up degraded surfaces in riverfront area was just to show how much of the riverfront we're proposing to make degraded, which is only 4,086 square feet. So of a riverfront area that's 326,000 square feet in size, only 4,000 and change square feet is being proposed to be converted to what would be classified now as a degraded surface. So a very, very small amount of impacts there. The stormwater management stuff, you'll see our April 24th letter by Level Design going point by point with the PGP comments. And then Nick, maybe you can jump in here and highlight what other plan changes came as a result of the stormwater management review, and then what responses PGP had to their letter, and then what else you think needs to happen as a result of that.
Sure. So for the record, Nick Fasandola, Level Design Group. Scott, you want me to just share my screen so I can drive?
Yeah, I think that's probably better. Sure.
Okay, there we go. Right. So as Scott said, Pat Brennan from PGP Consultants issued a letter today. He actually emailed me and John about noontime today with 4 minor comments, a couple, one or two typos and a few other small things. So in order to get Pat to be able to provide that letter stating he's satisfied with the revisions, we actually issued an updated plan set addressing his 4 minor comments. I can walk you guys through those minor changes. No other changes to the plan were made. One of those minor comments was Pat wanted to see some snow storage areas. So we identified snow storage areas up along the driveway, on the northerly and easterly sides of the driveway, as far away from the wetland resource boundary as possible for these 4 lots here. And then we identified a small snow storage area for this lot to the south of the proposed paved driveway. Other modifications that were made last minute today, where this storm tech system here, the label had said 310 chambers, and they're actually 740 chambers. What that is, it's just a size designation. The chambers that are proposed are actually 2.5 feet tall, arch chambers, and the note had referenced the chambers that are actually only 16 inches tall. It was just a minor typo, no other information regarding the system size or the calculations provided in the stormwater management report had to be modified. It was just a typo associated with that. And the same thing with some of the notation for the proposed bioretention system right here. Some of the values that were identified in the revised stormwater report didn't make it to the plan revision. So we had correlated that information to match up what was in the most recent stormwater report, and Pat was satisfied with that. The last change, Pat wanted to see a different style of Cape Cod berm detail. He actually had sent over a recommendation on what he wanted to see, which I was fine with changing out our standard detail with this Cape Cod berm detail. And those were the 4 items that were addressed last minute today. So now I'll kind of walk through what the wholesale changes were from the initially submitted plan to the one that was dated April 24th. So one of the main comments that the reviewer had was that, excuse me, there was, we didn't have detailed soil test pits in each of the proposed stormwater management features. So we went out and did some testing in all the proposed stormwater management features, and we had to make some modifications to the proposed systems based on what was discovered during the testing. The soils are Class A soils, well draining, good material, sand and gravel. So we have rapid infiltration rates. With those rapid rates, you're required to provide a minimum of 44% total suspended solids removal prior to infiltrating. And some of the systems weren't up to par with that requirement. So we made some upgrades to the systems. So I'll start here on the left. What we ended up doing here was that we are now providing a water quality treatment unit. It's a CDS stormwater treatment unit, provides about 75% TSS removal on average. That's going to be collecting runoff from the impervious paved surface and then discharging to the storm water detention system that's going to be under the driveway. Overall, that system is going to have 95% TSS removal between the infiltration that's being provided and the stormwater quality unit that we're now installing instead of the catch basin, which we had previously shown in that area. This system, we reconfigured a tiny bit, modified the elevations after having the test pit data. We had to make some minor adjustments of the system and its positioning, and we also had to move that system outside of the 100-foot well buffer. So we're right on the edge of that with this little small system in this area here. We previously had a bioretention basin located in this area, but upon further investigation during the on-site test pits, groundwater was discovered at about 18 to 24 inches in that area, so it was not practical to have a system located in that area. So we modified the grading of the driveway through this center area where all this runoff from this area through here will now go to this proposed bioretention basin. So we had previously had a bioretention basin with a sediment forebay for pretreatment. Sediment forebay only provided 25% TSS removal. So what we ended up doing was we're now providing a stormwater treatment unit in this area, and we're utilizing that additional space where we had a sediment forebay to increase the capacity of this bioretention basin as far as storage goes, so that it can now handle the runoff from this paved driveway and this section right through here. And we also modified the grading of the driveway to put a high point further west of this dwelling here, where we're reducing the size of the drainage area going from the east of the basin, as it was previously, the high point was previously located right around the isolated wetland area here. As Scott said, we are now, we've regraded this area and providing a block retaining wall around the isolated vegetated wetland. We're about 2 feet off the edge of that with the face of the wall to provide enough room to install a sediment control barrier at the base of the isolated wetland. And as we're coming in through here, we have, there was a storm tech system in this location. When we kept the system in the same location, but had to modify it based on the soil testing data and modify the grades. Last but not least, we had a bioretention basin located in the front here. And, due to the groundwater elevation, we were forced to do something else. So we now have a catch basin, which is draining to a subsurface infiltration system. And this system is fitted with an isolator row, which is a DEP approved management system for removing sediment prior to infiltration. Other major plan changes, as Scott discussed, we updated some details as were required or requested by the reviewer. More detailed information on the proposed stormwater management systems. We upgraded the size of the proposed cleanouts from 4 to 6 inches. And last but not least, we provided a blow-up sheet of the culvert crossing. We went out there and did some additional surveying in the area, got some spot grades, identified the actual top of bank, bottom of bank, center line of the channel, and got grades on all those features, plotted them on this updated plan here. And we provided this quick summary of the Massachusetts river and stream crossing standards detailing compliance with those requirements. Overall, that's a quick summary of the changes that were made to the design plan. And I'll turn it back over to Scott.
Yeah, no, I think that sums up where we're at. I think it'd be best if we turn it back over to the commission at this point.
All right. So comments from John at all, or I mean, do we have? Are we in agreement that all the recommendations of the peer reviewer have been addressed, or is that going to be something we're going to need to continue to work on?
Well, I did provide the commission some recommendations for environmental stuff. I didn't know if Pat was going to be able to get the stormwater information to us in time, but it seems like he did today. I wasn't able to upload all that information to the commission in the time frame, but I did read through the report, and what Nick and Scott have said about Pat's comments is true. It meets all the specifications based on his professional expertise for stormwater. It's just more so kind of some of the environmental stuff to kind of weed out and let the commission decide upon for this project. Like I said, this project's within an ACEC. They're proposing a crossing. There is a vernal pool on site. So those are all some of the comments that I had to the commission. So I'll let the commission take it from here if they want to.
Questions from anybody on the commission?
So Julian, I have several. So one of the interesting things to me is it looks like your frontage is on South Worcester Street And the only thing that shows South Worcester Street, which I just noticed when you were flipping through, was your cover sheet. So is your frontage on, if you go back to the cover sheet, because right now you're showing frontage on Dean Street and John Scott Boulevard, and I'm like, where the heck is South Worcester?
It's way over here.
So, right, so is the street, so we have to just, we're gonna have to be able to reference this permit accordingly, because if you just wrote 301 South Worcester, right, the street addresses aren't gonna be John Scott and Dean. It's just kind of confusing. Right, because your driveway access is from, I just want to make sure the order's written correctly.
Yeah, I mean, Nick, can you explain where we are with the A&R process with the planning board? And then, maybe, I think, Lisa's point's are a good one, I think. I mean, really, is that, should we change how that we labeling this plan set, for the purposes of permitting so that it keeps things cleaner moving ahead?
Sure. So we were in front of planning board with an A&R plan two weeks ago, I believe. And that plan was endorsed, and the lot configuration, which was endorsed by the planning board, is essentially what you see on sheet 2 here. This is a proposed property line. So we have 5 lots we're proposing. So I kind of run through, these are all proposed property lines. That plan was endorsed, but it has not yet been recorded. So these are not separated lots until that plan is officially recorded and deeds are created for each of these parcels. So
But your frontage is on John Scott Boulevard for 4 of them. So the permit should be issued to 4 lots on John Scott and 1 on Dean Street, correct? And then what happens to the rest of that land, by the way? So what's the excess acreage all the way over to the remainder of the lot, all the way to South Worcester, and what happens to that land?
So we have that listed here. The remaining area is 17.66 acres, and that's going to continue to function as it does today. It's going to continue to have a single-family residence, associated barns, garages. That parcel of
the applicant and their family live on that farm property and will continue to do so. That's their plan. So these parcels here are just being parceled off while they continue.
So it's our obligation to keep track of 1, the addresses, 2, where we are in the world, Waldo, because if the applicant decides to subdivide further, now we're approaching the 10% for riverfront, perhaps, right? We're looking at impacts to this lot cumulatively, so that you can't just carve this out and say, this is the impact. And then 5 years from now, they're going to carve out a different piece and say, these are the impacts. So,
right.
Just trying to make sure we have the addresses. So again, will the street, I assume because you have frontage on John Scott, that your addresses that you'll be given by whoever are going to be John Scott and Dean Street. Is that correct?
I would assume so, yes.
Yeah, I would think so, right?
Okay. So John, Thomas, we should wait for that information because the 301 South Worcester Street is really where the remaining frontage is. So we're going to really have to lay this out in an order of conditions of what's going on at 301 as a whole. Then they, subdivide. We're going to have to tell the story in the order. Okay. So that if we pick this up a few years from now, we're going to know what the heck's going on.
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, I'm going to put in some sort of language with regards to the riverfront calculation. I think they're pretty close to the threshold anyway.
Right, but it's going to apply to the rest of 301.
Right. I don't think there's much work they would potentially be able to do within the riverfront area based on these restrictions because they're pretty close at the 10% right now.
Right, so we just have to make sure 301 if it comes in someday.
It'll be documented.
Yep. Okay. The next question I had was, is this going to be, I assume it's a common driveway, so it's going to be owned by 5 different people, 5 different entities. So how is the O&M going to work? So you're going to put the onus of cleaning a water quality structure and cleaning those basins to what? Is it going to be a homeowners association? Is it going to be, how is that going to work, the O&M?
The O&M would be through some type of homeowners association. We did submit a draft to the planning board, as we have a special permit application in front of the planning board for the common driveway, and it would just be for 4 lots. So the lot up in Dean Street is going to act as an independent lot. They're not utilizing the driveway. They would not be part of the homeowners association. In the stormwater report, I provided 2 types of O&M plans. I provided just the standard single-family homeowners part of the O&M plan, and then I provided a separate O&M plan and long-term pollution prevention plan associated with the BMPs that are going to be part of the common driveway, which would be, we have this bioretention basin here, and this subsurface chamber system here. This other system we actually left out. It's going to be primarily treating runoff from the homeowner's driveway portion. If you look up through here, it will take a little bit of runoff from the common driveway, but it's primarily taking runoff only from its own property. So that's going to be part of their individual O&M plan. And yeah, that would all be handled through a homeowner association, which would be, like I said, we provided a draft, but the final is going to be prepared at the time when these lots are all finalized, and the subdivision is recorded. The A&R subdivision is recorded for this type of use here. But I provided the backbone. I provided the O&M plans. I provided the long-term operation and maintenance plan for, like I said, both the aspects of the common driveway and the single-family residential stormwater component. Say like this house right here has a small system that's only treating rooftop runoff. So that's detailed in their O&M plan for their house. That O&M plan also includes information on, clean your rooftop gutters to make sure you don't have blockage of stormwater going to your individual stormwater system that's treating your rooftop runoff.
Yeah, those are the basics. What I'm really concerned about is the water quality unit, for instance, the average homeowner on the person that's going to own the Dean Street address. Did you say they have a separate water quality unit on that lot that they'll be responsible for?
There is one here, yes, to provide additional treatment.
So their O&M is reflective of the fact that they have this very expensive water quality unit that has to be maintained.
Correct, yes.
And clean. Okay. As long as that's going to make it in there, that's fine.
Yeah, we have an inspection schedule. I don't expect these to need to be maintained as much as you would like a commercial parking lot, where you're gonna have a lot more flow, a lot more sand, a lot more salt running through these things.
Right.
It's a residential driveway. We're putting it in there as essentially overkill to get to that 44%, and because we're so close to the PBP.
Understood. They just need to know it's not a usual structure. That's all.
Yep, 100%.
So how are the vernal pools, well, the one vernal pool, how is that going to be protected in perpetuity over there? Again, you're going to have a homeowner. They might not know what a vernal pool is. So this is always the issue with, you understand that you're not going to touch it, but then somebody goes in there and moves in there and has no idea what's in their backyard. That's my concern, the long term. I mean, you're just doing this to get through the process. I can appreciate that. But what happens? Are we going to take any provisions for trying to protect that area? And should we do so now?
Yeah, I mean, these issues come up a lot. There is in our case, I think maybe some appropriate signage could be conditioned on this. I found those to be quite effective throughout Massachusetts on projects where there wants to be, buffer zone recognition. If the commission has other preferences for that kind of, demarcation, then, I'm open to suggestions. I sort of like the idea of signage, 25-foot intervals or something of that nature that can be conditioned along that boundary edge.
Okay. That's something that we'll have to either write in or ask you to show on the plans. And then is there a wall detail for around the other IBW there? Is that a detail? Is there a detail, I should say?
A detail? No, I don't believe we included a detail. I believe that wall would cross the 4-foot high threshold, and it's going to need a structural design on it. We're anticipating it's going to be articulated block, easy to install, no deep footing, essentially just scrape out 6 inches to a foot, put down crushed stone, place the blocks, and backfill as you increase the grade. So something of that nature. I mean, we did call out articulated block, but we don't have a final detail on it. I'm leaving that to the structural engineer who would be designing this thing prior to the start of construction.
Okay, well, John Thomas, let's add a condition, please, that they include that. And then if you could zoom in, please, to that area, because you're gonna have to take provisions for sediment control while that wall's being constructed. I don't know if it's going right up to the edge of it. Okay.
Correct. Yeah, so I don't know if you can see it. It gets kind of tight with the line types. As I stated earlier, that the wall is set, the face of the wall is 2 feet off of the edge of that IBW. So, I'm hoping that we can get a silt sock, a 12-inch silt sock at the base of that, and then the work can, for the installation of that wall, can continue. We do have a little bit of wiggle room. I have a proposed guardrail at the top of the wall, so there's about 3 feet here. In reality, I need 2 feet minimum to the back of curb to get a guardrail in, a wooden guardrail. So we do have that extra foot of buffer to work with if we have to push it back a little bit to accommodate proposed construction of the retaining wall.
Okay, so I assume you'll give the structural those parameters.
Correct.
Yeah. So John Thomas, if we can add a condition about review and approval of that wall prior to construction.
Do you want to have plans or do you want just review and approval?
No, we need plans.
Okay.
I want to know what they're going to, we have to have plans of record that they're going to build from, right?
So final construction plans is what you're looking for.
We
Okay.
can compare it to the as-built when they're done.
Okay.
Okay, I think that's all I had. Thank you.
Anyone else have any questions on this? Any comments from members of the audience? John, it was not clear to me whether this is something we are at the point where we can close or whether there are other, I know you just received the peer reviewers' comments. So do we need to continue while you have more time to go over all of that?
I'm not a civil engineer, so that's why I rely on our peer review. And it seems that everything they've done has met the thresholds and the standards based on my initial review of it. If the commission feels comfortable closing the hearing this evening, I don't see an issue with that. There were some recommendations I had. They were very minor, but it's up to the commission as to kind of how they feel towards this project.
So John, did we get either a verbal or in writing that is it Pat believes that the design meets the criteria?
Yes, we did receive something of that nature.
Okay. So what are the final issues that you want us to consider?
I think one of the main components here is just to remember that we're in an ACEC. So I don't know if the commission wanted to have a wildlife habitat study. I know that Scott and his team said that they can provide one, but it's up to the commission if they feel that it's necessary. So it's not required, but it's something that, a project of this nature could suffice. It's up to the commission though. So
not having been to this site, I assume you have, and I'm going to ask Mr. Goddard for his opinion. As scary as that sounds.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. So the the wildlife habitat considerations that would come up in a habitat evaluation probably would have been focused on two things. One is the presence of an uncertified, non-jurisdictional vernal pool and giving that some due consideration. I think the plan has done that responsibly. The triggers that would have come up in the vernal pool review under the wildlife habitat evaluation for riverfront area would have recognized and been triggered if there was filling of the pool itself, for sure. But the respect that we've given to the buffer zones here, I think, make for a good project in that regard. The other area we would have seen an interest for wildlife habitat, although it be outside of riverfront area, would have been the area of the crossing, and whether or not the crossing that's proposed is in fact an improvement to overall wildlife habitat connectivity between the left and the right-hand side of the driveway crossing. And I believe that's really the purpose of the stream crossing standards. In one way, it's kind of a twofold thing. One is flow path connectivity, but also wildlife habitat connectivity, and to allow for movement of small mammals, reptiles, amphibians along those stream corridors where it doesn't presently exist. So right now, a small animal would have to travel up and over the cart path, which is, we're basically building the common driveway in the same location where there's an existing cart path and crossing. And so that's a wildlife improvement. The rest of it is the minor encroachments into the riverfront area is partly forested and vegetated and partly field areas. So there wouldn't be any other significant habitat features that would be identified in a wildlife habitat study. It really would have been the vernal pool. So I think the project meets that criteria and is not needed in this particular case. If on behalf of the applicant, if we're able to close the meeting tonight, I think that would be great and preferred.
Thank you. Well, John Thomas, are there any other issues?
No, I mean, basically, I think that if the commission decides to close this meeting tonight, then they're stating that, for instance, they don't feel that this project's going to have any sort of negative impacts to that vernal pool or the vernal pool habitat area. So if that's how they feel, then I mean, it's fine.
Yeah, the only thing I would look for is some type of signage and around that vernal pool.
Absolutely. This, and I can help John, if you guys don't have standard language you use for those kind of things, I can provide some suggestions for you. Otherwise, I'm happy to use your sign preferences.
Yeah, I mean, we have some signage, but obviously I'm always looking for better clarity and more.
I think Jennifer had some good ones that
we do have the wetland buffer signs that we have, but we don't have any vernal pool or sensitive vernal pool habitat signs to my knowledge.
Okay.
But I think the buffer zone sign should be sufficient for this.
I think so. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, it's always how you're going to post them that is the question, because those metal posts are no good because people just pick them up and move them.
Yeah, I guess the question is, do you feel that, a visual barrier along I guess it would be the northerly section near the residence there would hold a lot more weight, whether it be a split rail fence or something of that nature, something that's a little bit more significant, just to kind of, protect that area.
So we already have some small retaining walls in there.
Can you zoom in there, please? Sorry. Can you zoom in? Because we don't want that signage up against the vernal pool because, they rely on the habitat around it.
I would suggest putting them at the limit of work area, posted up, 3 to 4 feet high, or on some fairly robust postings, not just little metal posts, but either concrete post like bounds or stone bound types that are somewhat robust like that.
I think maybe a split rail is better because the bounds, people tend to knock them out of the way, and they also ignore them because they're flush with the ground and they're in the way when they mow.
So
So,
John, why don't we spec it as a special condition, a split rail fence along that whole limit of work on the northern edge for that lot, and then every other post can have one of the signs put on it. How's
Yeah,
that?
I'll call that out on lot.
Okay.
This is lot
Yeah, if you
3,
can
correct?
just- you can just update the final plan set to show that, that would be great.
Sure thing.
So I'm thinking maybe just run it to the edge of this retaining wall here and then have the split rail fence come along the limit of work line. Would that work? I don't think anyone's going to go too far behind the retaining.
Yeah, maybe you could just connect it up. How high, actually, there's an idea right there. How high is that retaining wall on the side of the,
It's
No, the
4
other
feet
one.
at its,
The other
at
one
its,
by the
at its
garage.
peak, it would be 4 feet.
okay, so I'm thinking, what if you just connected the two retaining walls?
From wall to wall.
Right, because you're not going to put a split rail fence behind a wall, right? Because then you're going to have a 4-foot wall with a split rail fence behind it. That makes no sense, but to me, it doesn't. Yeah, I think it's cleaner if you just connect those two walls. Kind of know, between the walls and the fence, not to go back there.
Not a problem. We'll update the plan and provide some additional language on how and when the fencing is to be installed.
Thank you.
All right, there is a hand up. Computer with the name of Nora Justice. So
Yes,
please identify where you are in relation to the project, and then ask your question.
sure. Thank you very much. My name is Nora Justice, and I live at 309 South Worcester Street, which is actually only one home away from this project behind the Godfrey residence. And I had a question regarding the mention by Mr. Thomas of a wildlife review, or what, I'm sorry, I'm the layperson. I don't know exactly what the phrase was for that, but I do know that living here abutting when I'm in a butter, living here abutting the pond and all of the waterways that go between my property and out here and back where these houses are set to be built, is a tremendous highway, is the best way I can think to describe it, for all sorts of wildlife that come. They're already kind of cut off because of, John Scott Boulevard. A lot of their the animals that come through our property have very little area as it is to move around and to migrate from one area to the other in their different breeding seasons and stuff. And we see all kinds of animals out here in back of us. So I didn't know whether that wildlife review has anything to do with just regular migrating animals that are coming through, for their breeding purposes and stuff.
So I can comment on that.
Who wants to address that?
I mean, I could, Mr. Chairman, just
All right,
briefly. So the wildlife habitat evaluations under the Wetland Protection Act are targeted specifically to resource area impacts and not, and not areas outside of resource areas. So, I mean, as crazy as it sounds, it's not even supposed to include buffer zones. It's just, so in this case, it would just be riverfront area impacts and the crossing that we're proposing. So it would have a wildlife habitat evaluation would have a very limited scope. I've done hundreds and hundreds of them over the years, and the issues that I outlined to the commission would be for sure the issues that would come up if I just put it to paper. So I don't think anything of substance would change on this project as a result of doing the habitat evaluation. We have maintained corridors of wildlife habitat, right? So this corridor on the southern half of the site, if you look where the wetlands are, there's a wildlife movement path all the way through there. And on the northern side of the development, the corridor all along Goose Brook is intact. So there's pathways for the animals to travel and migrate and to do all the things that they're doing now. It's not just a complete disruption of habitat. So I'm comfortable with the design as it relates to wildlife habitat.
Okay, I appreciate your input. Just to share with the commission that being a neighbor of David Godfrey, I've hiked out here on many occasions and been out on this backland quite a bit. And while I appreciate that, that Mr. Goddard is talking about wildlife corridors that have been left available, it seems to me, just from walking out there, that there's very little land left that's not underwater, except for this area where you're going to build on. So, I guess I would have to walk out there with this plan to actually look at what you're talking about as having left pathways for them. This is an extremely, extremely wet area. Most of it is underwater. It seems to me very hard to imagine that these homes won't be, completely surrounded by water as well. Without, like I said, without walking out there with the plans, I'm probably just a layperson that's mistaken, but I can see that a little corner of Mr. Godfrey's property comes in on the right there. But there's just, a huge amount of wetland that this whole thing encompasses. So that's just my comment as a person that's in a butter. And I appreciate all the work and everything that you guys have done to prepare this, and to, the questions that you're asking are way above my pay grade and way above my understanding. But I just appreciate everything, particularly in the protection of that vernal pool. I was under the impression there was actually a second vernal pool out here. Where I've hiked, I've seen another one out by that culvert that crosses that common driveway at the front where it comes off of John Scott Boulevard. And I think I heard someone mention earlier in the discussion that there's another area that's possibly considered. Some people might look at it and think it was a pool-like thing, but it's actually, it doesn't fill in the spring or something, somebody said. But I'm not sure that I understand that part of the discussion, because I've seen another area out there that looks to me like a vernal pool. So anyway, thank you for letting me share tonight, and I appreciate everything that you guys are doing.
All right. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
And I think unless there are further questions and comments, we have gotten all of the information needed with regard to compliance with wetland protection and stormwater issues. So we can consider a motion to close to generate an order of conditions for the project.
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing for file 250-1124.
Second.
A motion by Lisa, and I don't recall who was that. Mark, you got your second in just before Ron did, or?
Yes.
Okay, so motion by Lisa, seconded by Mark. We're going to do a roll call vote, starting with Ron and Mark.
Aye.
Aye.
And Dan and Lisa.
Aye.
Aye.
And Tama?
Aye.
And I'll throw in an aye, so the motion carries. The hearing is now closed, and we'll be reviewing an order of conditions at our next meeting, which is the 22nd of this month.
Thank you all. Have a good night.
Thank you, guys. Our next item on the agenda is file number 250, not issued yet, the actual final number, concerning 192 Taunton Avenue, Kevin Lobuser. Do we have a representative for that project?
Yes, I'm here. My name is Peter Lavoie. I work with D&L Design Group.
So there were, I don't recall exactly what the issues were to be resolved.
Just to give the commission a little bit more heads up, similar to 301 South Worcester, I received some feedback from Pat regarding this project. I guess there's still some, or there were some comments, right, Pete? Right?
Yes, that is correct. Yep.
And I guess also the other concern is I emailed DEP today, hoping to get a response back. I haven't received anything, but I'm going to call them again tomorrow. They haven't released a DEP number for this project as of yet, so I'm going to try to get a hold of them to see what the status is and provide Mr. Lavoie an understanding as to what is still needed for DEP to issue that number. It could be a form, it could be something else. I don't know at this time.
So we don't then have any substantive design issues to discuss. It's just getting the number squared away and finding out if there are any other issues. Did I interpret that correctly?
Well, there were some additional comments. I didn't see Pat's most recent email. Did he get back to you, Mr. Lavoie?
I did not send, so basically there were 5 comments that were left over. 3 of them were HydroCAD, so I needed to update and revise my HydroCAD per his recommendation. 1 was a narrative. I needed to add something to the narrative regarding phosphorus removal and how I met the Norton's stormwater bylaw. And then the last one was just some proposed spot shots out near, he wanted some additional spot shots out near the intersection of Old Taunton Ave and the Common Drive, just indicating how the runoff was going to stay on the site and not go out into Old Taunton Ave. So I did make the adjustments to the HydroCAD. His concerns, they were minor, and by doing that, I did reduce the runoff and volume towards my interest point. But I never sent him the revised HydroCAD files because I thought it was too late for him to comment on it. So I didn't want him to, I didn't want to rush to get the information to him, and I didn't have a DEP number anyways, so I figured this would be continued.
So I guess the item on the table is that the peer reviewer still needs to look at some information, still needs to get back and his final response, hopefully letter to the commission saying that everything's good with the project. And hopefully by next meeting, you'll have a DEP number. So that way, for instance, everything will be good for this project. That's my understanding.
Yes. I just need to send out my drainage report, and putting it together is a little bit involved. And then just, the small changes I made to the plan so I can send out a complete package to the commission and him.
All right, so our next meeting is the 22nd of May. It sounds like we're ready for a motion for a continuation to resolve these issues.
I'll make that motion to continue the public hearing filed to 50-XX. 192 Taunton Ave, should say.
All right, so we have a motion by Lisa, and I think that was a second by Dan. Is that right, Dan?
Yes.
All right, so again, for continuation of this hearing until May 22nd, starting roll call vote, starting with Ron and Mark.
Aye.
It looks like Mark magically disappeared, so we'll go with Dan and Tama.
So, someone else wants to.
Aye.
Aye.
And Lisa?
Aye.
And I'll throw in an aye. I think Mark was having some problems, so he'll be back. And our next item is ANRAD 1 Dean Street. Apparently there's continuing work on this application, so there's been a request for a continuation until the 26th of June. So we can consider such a motion. That concerns file number, it's again to be.
I'll make.
Go ahead. All right.
So moved.
We have a motion by Dan and seconded by Lisa. And again, roll call vote starting with Dan and Tama.
Aye.
Aye.
And Lisa and Ron.
Aye.
And I'll throw in an aye, so the motion carries. So Mark, we whizzed right past. I guess you're having some technical difficulties.
Yeah. Sorry about that. My ordinarily reliable computer has not been reliable lately, so.
Don't you love that?
Yeah.
Well, we are now up to a order of conditions, which was on reading concerning.
Question for the minutes.
Say one more time, Dan.
No, Dan, we're looking at an order of conditions first.
Everyone's
The draft order for 25
Oh,
projects.
okay. Well, all right. Well, I just wanted to know if Mark is counted among the aye votes, or do we have to wait?
I think Mark
For that.
was temporarily unavailable for the
So
vote.
Mark abstained from the vote.
Yeah, he missed the vote.
He missed the vote.
Okay, thank you. That's all I want to know. Okay.
So order of conditions for file number 250-11130 East Hodges Street. Kind of a long draft with a lot of different side routes, but not really controversial in any way. Any comments?
So the main comments for this that I had, just to kind of advise the commission, was mainly with regards to the groundwater. I mean, we don't have information on the groundwater, so the comment that I had with that was that if I wanted to reiterate the fact that if they did encounter groundwater during any of the construction, that they contact us and provide us some additional information for dewatering. I think that was one of the main conditions for number 16 there.
Yeah.
And then the other question that I had for the commission is whether they wanted to implement more of a visual barrier with actual physical demarcation, not just posts, and whether they wanted to have a split rail over the posts for the physical barrier because you know, this area is sensitive. They are doing work up to the 25 foot. It is going to be a single family residential project. It's within an ACEC. It's within natural heritage habitat area. So, you know, I just thought that it was a very, you know, high profile, environmentally sensitive area that could potentially, you know, require some sort of fortified physical barrier. You're muted, Lisa. Sorry. You're still muted.
I plan to share that we can take a peek at where you're talking about, because does this one have a wall?
This one does not have a wall.
It doesn't have a wall. Okay, so we may be looking at a split rail, something a little more permanent.
Yeah, I mean, I just thought of it, you know, and that's kind of the discussion that I wanted to have with the commission to see if they were feeling the same on this project.
And I do have a comment on the groundwater condition that we need to update.
Okay.
Do we have are you're searching for the plan to show?
I'm getting the plan up right now. Give me 1 second.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, so that's why you highlighted 48, John.
Yeah, I highlighted it and just kind of just outlined it for everybody. Let me just share my screen right now.
Yeah,
So-
I thought that was kind of settled. I mean, it's in the order. So
this is the design that the commission closed at the last hearing, and you know, this is kind of what they're going with now. You know, my concerns are, you know, the project, a majority of it, although Natural Heritage has commented that it's not going to have any particular take on you know, a specific species or anything like that. I guess it has the potential of having those sort of species in the area. So, you know, it would be prudent to kind of protect those. And obviously the new landowner that is, you know, or the person that's going to buy this house may not know, and that way prevents them from doing any sort of additional harm or any disturbance within 25 feet of the wetlands.
So John, can you point to those areas? Is it
So the area that the main area that I'm concerned with, I mean, this is similar to some other projects here in town that the commission has done in the past. So, we're keeping true to this, is that, obviously this section here, which is kind of the left-hand side and kind of running around here where the driveway is. I mean, there's not much of a yard area. And, my concern is that they're going to basically, push that out if we don't kind of, I guess, corral or contain or let them know that this is a sensitive area. And then obviously the septic leaching field, I'm not overly concerned with that area because obviously they're not going to touch it once it goes in. But then obviously over here, it's more of the barn. I don't want any more disturbance happening near the barn. So the two primary areas would be near the house. And then I think towards the proposed barn that they have kind of outlined here for setting up that kind of visual barrier.
Yeah. Well, go ahead, Lisa.
I was just going to say, so we should maybe condition this to be specific about perhaps a split rail fence.
Okay. Yeah, it's in there. It's in there as split rail fence. I just haven't identified the areas
Right.
per se.
Yeah. So that's what we're going to have to do. So is that the northern property line, where it intersects with so basically they want to convert this is a mistake. It's not an erosion control fence. It's a sediment control fence. So they want to convert the sediment control fence to a split rail fence in the following locations. And then we can identify it that way. Right. Because it pretty much, it's going to follow the said fence.
Yeah, it's gonna follow the limit of work that they have proposed.
Yep.
Correct.
Yeah. So we just need to correctly describe it.
I mean, what I've done in the past also is I've taken a screenshot of this and I've highlighted,
Okay.
in the actual order where we're asking them to put a visual barrier. So,
Okay.
I can do that as well. So if the commission feels comfortable enough to we can walk through it right now as to kind of where they would like to have this visual barrier.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you 100%. This is at risk for, people expanding their yard right into the wetlands. So I mean, I think, around the house and around the barn are primary areas.
Okay. So if the commission feels comfortable, should I say that from where the outfall for the stormwater is and kind of take that limit of work all the way up to where the bend in the...
Well, I actually think it should start at the property line, but then you don't want to have that flared end section going into a fence.
Right.
Because the area that they may expand, that they're going to be tempted to expand, is that side yard.
This right here, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and going to the west.
Right.
So you want to stop it short. I would probably stop it maybe 10 feet short of that flared end section. Because if you have to repair it, you don't want to take the fence down, maybe 8 feet away and start it back up again.
Do you feel that we should, so I guess if I'm drawing this, so starting at the property line here, coming this way.
Yep. And then stop it and then pick it back up again on the other side of the flared end section.
Okay. And then taking it right to the bend here. Is that, are you comfortable with stopping?
Even a little further.
Yeah, I would go a little further because
make it.
You don't want them plowing snow. I can see this right now. That's where you want to plow the snow.
Okay. So we take it right up to the corner of the leaching field?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then for instance, over here, do you feel that where this triangle is, starting it back up over here and taking it around towards the street?
Yeah. In that location, I would just replace the sediment fence with, I would follow the said fence.
The whole entire thing?
Around. Yep.
So going all the way back to the...
No. Where it intersects at that triangle.
Okay.
So just a backward C there, if you will.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
I think that makes sense.
What I can do is I can copy this and then just insert the recommendation or the requirement for having a visual barrier as the commission has outlined. So.
Okay. So for 16, John, we don't want to actually wait until they encounter groundwater. We know they're going to encounter groundwater on this plan. So I actually think we need to make this a deliverable that they provide a dewatering plan to us.
Okay.
So because if you're going to dewater, we're not going to stop and say, oh, hold on, now I have to go make up a dewatering plan and get it approved.
Okay.
All right. We should also reference, because there's new criteria and specs in the EPA construction general permit for dewatering. And I'd like to reference that criteria.
Okay. So I'll just add a note here.
So I would just say the contractor shall provide a dewatering plan for review and approval by the commission prior to start of construction. And then the dewatering plan shall follow the requirements of the EPA's construction general permit.
All right. I'm just going to copy and paste exactly what you just said. That way I don't have to type it up.
Okay.
So I'm just going to write that note there.
Okay.
All right. Okay. So, are there any other questions regarding this?
You basically, I mean, what is it? 41 talks about the 48. So that's just going to be in there as currently written.
Yeah, you're just going to add a screenshot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what I'll do is I'll kind of just add a screenshot of that visual barrier as recommended or as required by the commission.
Okay. Any other questions, comments, amendments? If not, we can consider a motion to accept the orders as amended, although the amendment is minor.
I'll make a motion to issue the order of conditions for file 250-1113 as discussed.
Motion by Lisa, seconded by. That sounds like. I think Mark, you made a noise first, so we're going to go with seconded by Mark. Roll call votes, starting with Ron and Dan.
Aye.
Aye.
And Mark and Tama.
Aye.
Aye.
And I'll throw in an aye. And Lisa, how do you vote?
Aye.
All right, motion carries. The amended draft of the order of conditions for 250-1113 is approved. And we're now up to draft minutes. I didn't see any minutes, so Dan, I assume you've been kind of straight out and not been able to do those.
Dan actually was able to get the minutes to me today. I was gonna upload them, but
John,
I didn't have time to do so. I apologize.
All right, so next time. All right.
Yeah. Some commissions are months behind.
And
yeah.
We're not just some commission, you know.
I'm saying some of them are pretty bad. We do pretty well, I'll tell you.
All right. So report from staff, anything to discuss?
I've got nothing. We've got a couple potential projects that are coming through the door, but nothing has solidified as of yet. But once we hear, I will let you all know.
John Thomas, I'm going to say it for the 15th time. Pine Street,
What about it?
all the tracking.
They got more sediment tracking, don't they?
Big time. Okay, so part of the problem is the construction entrance is nowhere near 50 feet long. So
I'll go talk to Sam tomorrow.
yeah, it's not working.
Okay.
So that street's a mess.
I'll go talk to him.
Some of the stone is dislodged, so that tells me the stone size isn't big enough either. So I would ask them to look at their detail again, because every single time I drive down that street, which is a couple times a week, there's tracking.
I will go talk to him.
Thank you. Okay.
I'm sorry, what street and what location?
It's
Uh,
it's Pine Street. It's
No, it's right in here.
it's
There's two major
90
subdivisions.
98 to 104 Pine Street.
It's the first one on Lone. Well, it's not the cluster. It's the other one. The
Yeah,
cluster is not doing a bad job.
No, they're doing much better than I thought they would do.
Yeah,
so.
but I think their exit doesn't measure 50 feet either. They just throw down stone for 15 feet and they think they're done. It's supposed to be a full tire rotation. That's why it's 50 feet. It's not just window dressing. So anyway, I gotta stop driving around town.
I need to stop driving around town.
Or you can get a drone.
No,
I have one of those.
you need to have an FAA license for that, don't you?
You do. My husband just got one.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have to pass a test. You have
Yeah.
to take tests, pass test. Yeah. And then you have to check in with Mansfield Airport because we're so
Right.
close to it.
You got
Right.
that airport nearby.
Yeah, it's all hand, it's all electronic. You just tie into their FAA system that day and tell them that you're going to be out there or see if it's clear. So it's pretty cool. Anyway, I can see
That'll
what
be the
you're all
future.
doing now.
That'll be the future. So, if we have nothing else, we can sign off.
All right. Until next time. Thank you guys.
Thank you.
All right. Remember the hot link.
Take care.
The hot link.
Oh yeah. No, I copied it right from Zoom. I'm shocked it didn't work. All right. I'll have to do it the other way that I did before that worked. So I'll do that next time.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep. Bye-bye.
Yeah.